Was this on you?
So it's so much more either. But I'm going to make sure that
yeah, so hopefully there are opportunities for that, and at least like times wise, kind of fit those in. They have it's from here it's about like a different class of usually. So I think you can kind of like pick and choose.
yeah, that's a good thing. I'm gonna have to talk.
Yeah, she's really helpful with that.
Oh,
They were it's a cup. Okay.
Oh, and it's
in the door. Okay. Oh,
All right, so welcome. And are we expecting more people?
We are. There's one person who is running late. Lauren is running late. I'm giving her directions on how to find us right now.
Sure, all right.
I think
Yeah,
maybe
that's
one or two at
not a
max.
problem. No, not a problem. If you need to use the restroom, just go down the hall. There's some water over here. And if you have any questions about the facility, I'm here to help.
I'm not exactly.
Good morning.
And you guys lift down to the.
For future the front door, you know, keep.
I know.
You have to go on with us, depending on.
Well, welcome to the Shiva Vishnu Temple, and welcome to this class. My name is Gaurav. We'll begin in about a minute or two. Just give the last couple of people coming in. Meanwhile, if there are questions, comments, things you want me to cover, I got a whiteboard right here, and I got a Sharpie in my left hand. So I'll take down notes, and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Today we're going to be talking in this room for about 90 minutes, and then we go into the temple. I'll prep you for the temple visit, and then we'll come back and debrief, see if you have any questions left, and then we're off to the races. We'll begin and end with a prayer. I'll chant the Sanskrit. I'll describe what it means in English, and yeah, looking forward to this. I've hosted one class last year. Usually Shivani does this, these classes. She's awesome. But it's me you got. So and yeah, and Lauren's great. Reverend Lauren is fantastic. She's come and taught at our classes as well. So we're really grateful for this relationship. Any questions? Anything you really want to cover? I'm happy to cover those. We'll make it interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to stop immediately and ask me questions. All right, so should we just give the last couple of people some time, or should we go?
I'm missing someone that was already here. Lori. Andrew just stepped down.
I think to make sure that other people got in. Gotcha.
All right, so let's get into the mood. All right, so please sit comfortably. Sit in any comfortable posture. Anything is fine. Feet on the ground, not a problem. Feet cross-legged is okay as well. Lotus, if you feel like it, whatever you feel like, it's all good. What's important is that you sit comfortably with your back straight. Close your eyes gently. Relax the expression on your face. Relax your shoulders. Keep your back, neck, and head in a straight line. And now, with your incoming breath, draw your attention inwards. Bring your attention into your belly. As you inhale, let the belly expand. As you exhale, let the belly return back. Keep the attention in the belly. Inhaling fully. And as you exhale, just let go. Every time you exhale, tell yourself in your own voice, in your own head, to let go. Let go of all the traffic. Let go of all concerns. Let go of anything that draws your attention out for the next 3 to 4 hours. As you exhale, simply let go. Breathing into the belly, breathing out from the belly. This part is optional, but I'd encourage you to do it. Bring your palms together at the heart center. Press the palms together very gently. Gently touch the fingers together. And very gently touch the back of your thumbs into the middle part of your chest. And hold it right here. Now bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. As you inhale and exhale, pay attention to any energy, any vibration, any goings on between the palms. And stay right here. We're going to chant Om 3 times and then the opening prayers, which I will chant. You can chant Om together with me. We'll be chanting one Om for exhale. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Inhale. Now inhale and chant. Sahana bhavatu, sahana bhunaktu, sahaviryam karvavahai, edasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Release your hands gently. Rub your palms together a little to generate some warmth. Then gently cup your eyeballs to the hollow of your palms. And then blink your eyes open and pull your palms back in. Namaskar. Namaskar and welcome. The meaning of this prayer is, may we both be nourished, may we both be protected, may our actions be made radiant, may our knowledge radiate out, and let there be no differences or enmity between us. So I welcome you to this class. My name is Gaurav Rastogi. I teach yoga at the Livermore Temple. I teach meditation also to this community. I am founder and director of the Chaplaincy Institute, where we teach counselors of Hindu tradition. I also speak at interfaith events. I speak at Tri-Valley Interfaith in Livermore. I've spoken at Walnut Creek, San Francisco, the Peninsula, and across other places as well. So I'm used to all sorts of questions. No question is too simple or too complex for me. Feel free to throw anything that comes to your mind at me. I'll be your guide to the Hindu temple as well, and to the Hindu tradition. And before we begin, has everyone been to a Hindu temple before? You have? You have not? All right. Are you looking forward to it? All right. What do you expect to see? Ganesh, for sure, yeah. Hinduism and yoga have become so much part of the popular culture that you would know Ganesh when you see Ganesh, because of course, why would you not? You would know Krishna as well, of course, from people who kind of look like me, but singing much more melodiously than I am. And yes, so you would know a little bit about Hindu culture just from pop culture. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the tradition. I have a few talking points that I like to talk about, but again, let me warm you folks up. If you have questions, ask me. Now, now's a great time. Yes?
This temple is from which teachers, which lineage?
So it's the Shiva Vishnu temple, and it's affiliated somehow to the Tirupati temple in Andhra Pradesh, in India. But there's no individual teacher that you could trace back to. If anything, it might be Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya from 800 AD. But otherwise, no. This is yeah. But that is a great question. So the Hindu society is organized very differently from the Western society, and traditional Hindu society more so. It's not an Indian society like any other society. So the organizing principles of the Hindu tradition are somewhat different from the Judeo-Christian model that exists predominantly in the West. Where, for example, one of the talks I've done previously is on Hindu congregations, and especially a visit to a temple is not like going to a Jewish temple or a Christian church where we don't. It's not a specific day of the week that you go. You could go any day. Of course, people go on weekends because that's when they're available. But services are available all through the week and through the year, and they vary based on the time of the year and what's going on. And I'll talk a little bit about it. But my favorite joke on the congregation business is: has someone been to India? You've been to India. Who else has been to India?
I've been through India.
You've been through India, right? But you've seen, a bunch of Hollywood movies about India. So you know one thing for sure from your pop culture knowledge of India is that Indians don't congregate; we crowd. So Hindus don't have a congregation as such, or a temple that they go to. We go to all temples because what the heck, you could crowd or flash mob any temple you want. So Hindus are I could visit any Hindu or Buddhist temple, and I would consider it my own. I could personally visit any place of worship, and I'd call it my own. But that's just I guess some Hindus would be that way as well. But in general, Hindus can go to any Hindu temple. They're not bound to go to only that temple or only that type of temple, generally speaking. Any other questions?
So the services that happen all the time, but are they at particular times or?
Yes, there are specific times of the day, and it depends on the deity that we're addressing. The temple is not just a place of worship; these are places of residence for those deities. So they're essentially designed to be run as households of that deity. So they're being woken up, they're being given a bath, they're being prayed to in the morning. Then there'll be lunch for them. Then the doors will shut, and then they'll open again in the evening. The same process will repeat. So it's like they're at their home, and this is their staff. They're doing whatever they're doing. We're visiting them, and as if we're visiting them at home and asking them. So when you go visit someone, you have to visit them with their rules, and that's what we're going to talk about as well. More questions? All right. So the people who built the pyramids are not here to tell us about what they wrote about, what those times are, and what cultural context set those pyramids into place. The folks who were building Stonehenge are no longer here to speak with us. Those people are there, but their people no longer tell us what Stonehenge does and why it exists or what it does. Ancient cultures come and go all the time. But the Eastern traditions, especially Hinduism, is a unbroken chain over thousands of years. So the Hindu tradition speaks for thousands of years of history through these temples and through the tradition as we follow today. What that means is I could read a verse that was chanted maybe 5,000 years ago, and I could try to explain what that is. In fact, one of my favorite parlor tricks is actually, if you know, does everyone know the rapper Eminem? You know Eminem. There's one of his songs, it's Lose Yourself. Great song. I compared those lyrics with the lyrics from the Bhagavad Gita. And I kid you not, it's fantastic. You gotta see them side by side, right next to, if you've read psychology, the DSM 5 or 6. That's my favorite. It's one of my favorite talks that I give, which is you could do a side by side, and you could see that nothing's changed in 5,000 years except one was set in the middle of a battle between two sides of a family, and the other is a guy complaining that he is losing his nerves at a rap battle. Times change. But yeah, with the same symptoms, the same sort of checklist you run through. So the Hindu tradition, as being an unbroken chain over thousands of years, carries a lot of spiritual information and wealth of knowledge, which is available to the world. And that is available to the world in a living form through the Hindu tradition. A lot of other traditions, so a lot of things that we except in the West, as being part of another religion, you could trace back to Christian or pre-Islamic tradition. And if you really need to understand what those people were thinking, you could still talk to us and we could still explain what's going on. For example, why is there a fertility festival in spring? Why is there a winter equinox festival in the end of December? Why is there an ancestor worship thingy in late fall, in fall? All of those traditions the Hindus still follow. We have different reasons for it. So thank you. You might be able to sort of get a little more information about Western tradition from looking and talking to the Hindu tradition, because we carry a lot of information from that. The Hindu tradition is not merely a moral tradition or an ethical tradition. In fact, that's going to be the next segment of my talk. It is quite obviously not a moral tradition, but not in an immoral sense, but in a different sense. I'll explain. And so in that sense, not just a set of rules is what I mean by it that says thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that. And I'll explain why I believe that. But the Hindu tradition, in fact, is a wider system of living itself. So in the tradition itself are covered how to live better, how to live healthier, what a good society is about, how a king should rule, how people should work. All of those things are baked into the Hindu tradition. They're not outside the tradition. They're not things that you don't follow the tradition one way here and you step 2 steps away and it's different. That's not how. It's a very cohesive whole. Our name for our tradition, of course, we are happy to use the word Hindu. Last time I did this talk, some people were concerned that I might be offended if you use the word Hindu for me. I'm not offended. It's not an offensive word to me and certainly should not be to anybody else who is a part of this tradition. However, the word we use for ourselves is Sanatan Dharma. I'll write that up and I'll explain what it means. Two different words, Sanatana Dharma. Dharma, of course, from Buddhism, and Dharma is a pretty popular word. You might have heard the word itself, but I'll explain what it means in this context. Sanatana, S-A-N-A-T-A-N-A, Sanatana Dharma. These are actually paradoxical words, and in these two words, we cover pretty much all the widest range of paradoxes that are available. You would agree with me that if something was true on Tuesday and is not true on Wednesday, then it's not true. Anything that is true in time and only in a particular sort of given time frame or given context certainly cannot be true, right? So if it's true on Monday and not true on Tuesday, then probably not true. It's not a lasting truth that you can point to. And so Sanatan means outside of time. It is eternal, but not in eternal long-lived, but eternal as in outside of time. It is timeless truth with a capital T that this talks about. So Sanatan means timeless. That which we don't invent, we discover because it's always been true. For me, for example, what is my truth? I wasn't there before I was born, in this form certainly, and I will not be there after I'm dead in this form certainly. And so this form, one would agree, is not quite truth with a capital T. It's a relative truth. It's kind of true now in a certain context, given a few other circumstances, but not really true all the time. So that is not a Sanatan kind of truth, not a truth that is always true. It's a conditional truth. Dharma is the exact paradoxical opposite of that. You would also agree that that definition of truth as being eternally, forever true does not cover a lot of these contextual truths that we are also aware of, and one would accept those to be part of society as well. Right? My name is Gaurav Rastogi. You do drive on the right side of the road, right? And when I use a word, it means something that both of us agree on, right? Those are truths that are conditioned by space, time, and context. and truths that are conditioned by space and time and context, but are still true, we call dharma. Dharma is a very wide word. In fact, it's a word a little like set in English. It doesn't mean the word set. I'm just using that as an illustrative example. Set has about 150, 160 meanings in the dictionary. It's the word with the maximum range of definitions. Dharma itself is so complex that one of the two large epics in India is all about dharma. Mahabharata is all about dharma because dharma cannot be explained by a set of rules. It changes moment to moment, context to context, people to people, right? And so the way in the Indian tradition they've explained dharma through Mahabharata, the story of, essentially it's an epic story of two sides of one family warring against each other. And they've come to this war for a certain set of ethical choices they've each made. And this war has now become inevitable. So pretty much entire world, as known at that time, is arrayed on one side or the other, including, the head of one army on this side, the rest of his army on the other side. You got to pick sides on this battle. So they pick sides. This battle is an all-out battle, and of course, one side dies, the other side remains, and that's how we know that story. But the whole story is a discussion of dharma. It has, it has hundreds or thousands of conversations going on. A washerman and a lady, a husband and a wife, a dog and somebody else. Conversation about what is the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do? What could be right? And the context changes, the people that are talking changes, and they're always discussing dharma. Dharma is the universal foundation of life and relationships. It's what connects all of us together. It's what connects everything together. Yes. It's the universal foundation of life and relationships. The Sanskrit word for this we use usually in explaining is dharyati iti dharma, which means, you don't need to know Sanskrit. What it means is that which holds, coheres, bonds, glues together. That which glues together is dharma. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again. So Humpty Dumpty is building a wall, and he sits on it, and he falls down and cracks up. Why is Humpty Dumpty falling and cracking up? He's an egg, of course, in this case. But he's building a wall. That's why he's cracking up. You knew that now in retrospect, that he's building a wall between him and everybody else. Now he sits on it, falls down, cracks up, can't assemble together. A little of that is happening in the world right now because what's happening, we're all building walls of differences between us and the other. And those walls have come to a point where each of us individually is surrounded, encased inside of those walls. We're in a prison of our own individually. What does that mean? What that means is now people don't think twice about going to Walmart, buying a high capacity gun and shooting people inside, outside, right? Now, why would you do that if you think that other people are the same as you, that you have something that coheres you to your society? So the society is fraying in many ways because we are building these walls between us and the other. But the connections between us, surely there are connections between us. Those connections are dharma. That's what dharma means, that connection between people, that connection between things and objects and time.
I have a question with that because, so with the Bhagavad Gita, right, so with Krishna's there and he's speaking to Arjuna, right, who's at this point of crisis.
Yes.
So, and because he sees walls,
Yes.
Arjuna does, and so he needs guidance. Is that, is in that tradition, in this tradition, how important is it to have this guidance? I mean, it seems like to me, like we're just like by ourselves, we just keep building walls. And so it seems to be an essential message that I get from the Bhagavad Gita and the other texts that this guidance is of great importance.
It is extremely important, and I appreciate what you're doing as chaplains, because it is your job to provide that guidance in many cases to people in their time of crisis. Whether it's a health crisis or a spiritual crisis, it's a crisis nonetheless. And at times of crisis, people need help. And what you're doing by creating that space, by being available for that guidance, is immeasurable value to those people and to society as well. So I appreciate what you're doing. Yes, that guidance is needed. So that is dharma, what binds everything together. One of my other favorite examples from another talk I've done is, and I still don't know why it always works, is you go to a Costco and you buy an avocado. And you know what everyone's snickering because you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting a live grenade, you throw it at someone, they're going to die. This thing is hard, rock hard, right? And it just sits there in your home for like 2 weeks or who knows, 2 months. I know it takes a lot of time for the thing to ripen, then it ripens. My question to you is, what ripens the avocado? It's not on the tree. There's an invisible set of rules that are determining the ripening of the avocado. What are those rules? Must we not discover those rules and understand how those rules work? And that is the search for dharma. What are the rules that make everything work? And those rules, because they change moment to moment, these 2 words cover the entire set of that paragraph, something that never changes and something that changes every moment to moment. That range is covered in the Hindu tradition. I'm going to pause here. I've covered a lot of paradoxical distance. Questions, reflections, comments?
So when people talk about doing your dharma idea, is that just connected to what's right for you in the moment?
Oh.
Is that moment also considered a lifetime? Like,
yes, in the context. So it could be what is my swadharma, which is what my duties as an individual are. And those duties are, of course, context dependent because in the context, you have to do the right thing. But there's your life purpose why you're here, and that too is your dharma. And sometimes one might override the other because it depends on what's going on in that moment. A lot of people that do heroic things, like just jumping into something and saving a person while they're drowning or something. You ask them why they did it. It wasn't a complex calculus of this, I have this much, and if I live, then I'll do this. None of that, right? They just do it because it's the right thing for them in that moment. And that's their dharma in that moment. They did not have to go somewhere to sort of think for 2,000 hours. So that's dharma. Most of the challenge, the reason the Bhagavad Gita comes to be is because here's a warrior who should know what to do but does not because he's conflicted and confused. And that's because dharma is so subtle that we often pass by that home on the street but miss it because we're not paying attention. And therefore, in the middle of battle, the Bhagavad Gita is a really fascinating text. I encourage you to read it. In the middle of the battle, there's a battle about to begin, and there are 700 verses. And in there, Sri Krishna is actually describing the process for meditation. Now, I ask you, these are warriors with their bugles and their arrows. Why is the process of meditation being described here? It's not the time, it's not the place. But it is the time and the place. Because how are you going to know yourself if you don't know how to know yourself through the practice of sitting? Because it's so subtle. Your own center is so subtle that you miss it all the time. Yes?
so this may be jumping ahead and you can tell me to wait. Yesterday, we were having a conversation about our current president as an example of trying to find the divinity in someone. It doesn't always demonstrate divinity. And in my view, that's someone who's built such walls that they've gone really far into the delusion of separateness. Can you speak to what Hinduism would say versus good and evil?
Mm-hmm. That is actually a very nuanced question. That's a great question. Good and evil is a construct that's often used, and even Hindus use it because we think in English as well. I grew up thinking in English. So good and evil exists in the Hindu tradition as well, but not with the sharp boundaries that you might in the Western tradition. It's always, and it's not that it's relative and loosey-goosey, it is that it's all context. I'll give you an example. When we go inside the temple, right outside the Vishnu side of the temple, where Vasudeva is inside the temple, he has two guards stationed outside. Left side is Jaya, the right side is Vijaya. You will see two guards standing. And then these are statues, of course. But these two are his guards at his home. But the biggest epic stories, Ramayana, the main enemy in the Ramayana, the person that is killed as the whole source of that story, is the gentleman to the right. So, is he evil? Of course he's evil in that, which is why he's killed, but also he is actually God's guard in our tradition. So what's going on? And so for good to show up, evil must also show up. A lot of good stories are about evil and less so about the good themselves. So it's a very nuanced thing in the Hindu tradition. People are, there's always good in everyone, and sometimes the story unpacks itself later. Another thing, I'm just going to finish one thing out. The guy who built the atomic bomb, good guy, bad guy?
Yes.
Yes, Robert. That's a great answer. No. Yes or no? Good guy, bad guy? Good guy. He's one of our own, of course, he's a good guy. But he was a good guy because the war did come to an end. But also a bad guy because somebody used the bomb to kill people, to nuke two cities. That's not good, right? But good guy because his decision matrix was very simple. My job as a scientist, he said that to our friends down in Livermore over here. Our job as a scientist is to give our government the tools it needs to protect itself. It is not our job to bomb Japanese people. That is somebody else's decision. That's somebody else's karma. That's their problem. My job is to build the bomb, and I'm going to build it. So that's Oppenheimer, by the way. And if you see that famous Oppenheimer quote of, "I am become death," he actually quotes the Gita directly because he's influenced and he's using the logic of the Gita in talking to his fellow scientists, saying, our job is this, our dharma is to build the bomb. What people do with it is not. So is it evil? In some ways it is evil, but it's also not evil. So how do you decide that? You had a question.
Well, I think I'm just trying to add to that, and it's because I've studied just enough to know that I don't know anything. So,
That's two of us.
Yeah. And so the thing is, what I'm getting is more like the concept of evil is not really like, it's not like the Western standard of evil, but more like it's an internal struggle with those things that block you, from the, like the Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Like it's you beating up against yourself. And like,
Yes.
what are you going to do with this as it keeps presenting itself to you, which kind of helps you move into this dharmic circle of looking at it and wondering about it and sitting on it and destroying whatever. Is that fair to say?
That's very correct. That's an excellent answer. Thank you for saying that. So ignorance is the word you would use instead of evil. So ignorance of what? Ignorance of our connections, ignorance also of the spiritual that lies right in front of our eyes, but we don't see it because we are only seeing the material. Right? So in the ignorance of our own true nature, ignorance of the true nature of existence, all of those are ignorances that we could fault people for. That ignorance forces them to do evil things, but the root cause of all this is they're unaware of the truth, which they see with their plain eyes, but are unaware of it. So, and that brings me to one of the core tenets of the findings of the Hindu. The Hindu tradition is a very vast tradition. The temple-going population is maybe 1/5 of the overall Hindu population. There are cultural Hindus also, but also there are philosophical Hindus and ascetic Hindus. The entire range is available, but they all talk to each other. And a lot of the language is, that's my divine spirit trying to tell me something. I'm not paying attention. I'm like, so there's a significant conversation between all these. And so the truths that were found during meditations were relayed out in a particular form and then repackaged for the population. So a lot of the pop stories, a lot of the mythology in the Hindu tradition encapsulate very deep truths. But the truths, and it surprises me myself because I grew up in India and I went to certain temples that I did. I went back to those temples now that I'm a yogi, right? And I read Sanskrit texts directly. The inscriptions of the temple have not changed since I've grown up. They didn't mean the same thing to me at the time. I didn't understand them one bit, it turns out, the way I understand them now. So the Hindu tradition allows for this. A good way to think about it is strawberry has seeds on the outside, the fruit on the inside. Mangoes have seed on the inside and the fruit on the outside. And a lot of Hindu tradition is mango-like. A lot of fleshy fruit, sweet, textured, layered, interesting, right? But inside there's a seed of truth about spirituality. Every story in Hindu tradition has a kernel of truth inside, but it's encased in a beautiful, wondrous story. And it's wonderful how that works. And the interesting thing with that is we remember stories more than we remember truths. Because you got to cram truths in your head. E is equal to mc squared. A plus b the whole square is a squared plus b squared plus 2ab. I got to cram those in my head, right? But stories we remember. And the stories we tell our kids and their kids and their kids. So thousands of years, the stories have conveyed the truths in a way that if you put the seed into the soil, the same mango tree appears. Could be many generations out, doesn't matter. And that's what has sustained the Hindu tradition. These temples, the stories, the festivals, all of those help to sustain the tradition over these years, yes.
Could you give an example of timeless truth in the tradition?
Timeless truth is the nature of the self.
The nature of the self.
Yeah, is a timeless truth. So in the Hindu scripture, so the scriptures are mostly revealed scriptures in the sense that they came to people and those people heard them out. So they heard them. So one is Shruti, the other is Smriti. You remember them or you hear them both ways. And the Hindu tradition has a lot of scripture, verses, scripture, and so on. The main thrust of the sort of philosophical tradition is Vedanta. Vedas are the 4 main books. And then there's Vedanta, which is books from within those and of the wider tradition. And there are Puranas, which are history books and so on. So coming back to your question. What was your question?
An example of
timeless truth, yeah. So one of the truths in, and she's letting her be, it's all good. So one of the popular images used in the Upanishads. Upanishads are subsets of the Vedas, and they usually contain sort of truths, but sometimes in a story format. One of the images that's always conveyed is a branch of a tree with 2 birds sitting on it, golden birds, 2 birds sitting on it. One of the birds eats the fruits, sweet or sour, of that tree, and the other bird just watches. And the nature of the self is both of those birds. One of those birds sits here as me and consumes the sweet and sour fruits of this existence. The other part of myself is the unmoving, unchanging self, which is also yourself and yourself and yourself. So there are these 2 selves that we deal with. And all of yoga is the joining together of these two selves. All of yoga is letting the tweeting, sweet sour bird know that the unchanging bird is our true self, and that union, that yoking of those 2 is yoga. And every technique in yoga is about this joining.
What's the name of that? Sorry.
This one, I think, is in Kena Upanishad. I'm sure this is a very popular. Pretty much, there's 2 or 3 Upanishads that have the same.
Yeah, our Swamini uses this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she gives this example all the time.
Birds.
2 birds? Yeah. One of them is tweeting, is what I should say now.
Tweeting.
Yeah. The other one's just nodding there. Yeah, I don't think so. Delete your account. So you see, have I made any progress in my? All right. Let me come to another part, which is a well-known sort of popular understanding of Hinduism, and it's a Wikipedia untruth. Where it's well known, but it's not true. I'm going to tell you this. I was watching this documentary about a Pakistani city. The details are not useful, but the interesting part was they interviewed this gentleman who had left Pakistan. In fact, let's turn this thing off. Let me see if my Zoom is back up. Okay, we're back up. All right. So this Pakistani gentleman had left his home in the 60s or 70s and did a bus ride going all the way to Sweden. And he's describing his journey. But the most interesting thing is the end of his journey. He reaches Sweden or Norway or whatever European haven that welcomes foreigners. He reaches there and he says, for the first 6 months, I was really afraid of the bus driver, of the postman, of the policeman, of the customs guard, of the shopkeeper. I was just afraid. Why was he afraid? Because he thought they were all the cops. They were all police. People in uniform. He's like, what do I know? This is probably a cop. I mean, he's driving a bus. In retrospect, you'd think he'd know the difference, but he did not. Right? And that's the thing about Hinduism that you need to know is that we appear to have, I'm going to give you the reverse of what I just told you. We appear to have many gods and many sort of traditions, but the underlying truth is the same. We do not believe, we are not a polytheistic religion of the Roman variety. We do not have Olympians and gods duking each other out or, incesting each other and so on. None of that business. We're not a polytheistic religion in the Roman or Greek sort of manner. We're not monotheistic in the Abrahamic tradition either. We believe in the unity of all creation. Yes, we believe in everything being one. And therefore, there is no room for a God and an anti-God. It's all God. Everything is divine. Right? But, like the Pakistani gentleman I mentioned, once you stabilize yourself in this seeing, you can see that while there is only one God, God he or she does different things. Those different things can be seen distinctly. Here, God is a postman. Here, God is driving a bus. Here, God is a policeman. Right? When the government doesn't work, you don't say, well, Trump's not delivering our mail today. You kind of know that the US Postal Service is part of the government, but Trump himself is not personally delivering your mail. Right? That's not how it works, right? You don't go to the DMV and complain about the DMV to the fine folks at the Customs Bureau, Customs Patrol. You recognize that the government has different parts. Even though it's the government, it has different parts. And once you live long enough in a country, you kind of know how to tell between one and the other. And so the Hindu tradition has lived long enough to know the difference between God's different attributes and what God does. And that's how a lot of the Hindu tradition can be seen. It is not that we see three gods. If you say Hindus are three main gods. What are the three functions of God that we call out in Hindus? Creation, sustenance, and dissolution. Right? Because everything is changing. If everything is changing, something must be created all the time. Some things are not changing all the time at this time, and some things are being changed and transmuted into something else. All of those functions are functions of divinity, because that's how it's working. Right? And so we said, fine, they have names. This one's a cop, that one's a postman, this one's a creator, this one's a destroyer, this one's a sustainer. Those are just ways of understanding divinity. It's not that we think there are three antagonistic gods or their wives and their full families. That's a way to understand the truth.
So would it be fair to say that it just occurs to me that because there are so many gods and goddesses, and so when you're talking about dharma, that you can see your Dharma through all of those gods and goddesses' faces and their essence.
Yes.
That fair, which is, it actually opens you up to so many possibilities.
Yes, it does. Could someone tell me the time? It turns out I'm using my phone. I can't tell. 10, 20. Okay, good. So we can maybe talk for another 40 minutes and I'll take it over tempo. But I think we've earned ourselves a break. Right? So I'm going to break with something. So give me a second. One of the shortest, the briefest Upanishads in the Hindu tradition is the Ishavasya Upanishad. 18 verses and all. But frankly, just 2 are enough for pretty much any number of sermons and debates. The first 2 are good enough. But the first one the second one describes the nature of divinity in the following manner. It says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kimcha jagatyam jagat ena tyaktena bhunjita ma grida kasya sudhana. I'll explain what this means. Ishavasya idam sarvam. God envelopes all this. Envelopes all this. Filled with and enveloping all this. Yat kimcha jagatyam jagat. That which moves and does not move, everything is enveloped. Not just living creatures are godly and non-living creatures are not. Everything is enveloped, suffused in a way. Tena taktena bhunjita. Magrida kasya siddhita. Therefore, knowing this, renounce and enjoy. And do not covet somebody else's wealth. And that's interesting because what he's saying is everything is God. You're God, everybody else is, everything is God. And knowing this, there is no need to grip or grasp. Because there's nothing outside of us. Everything is inside. And truly, you think about what does it mean to enjoy something. And you'll realize that if you hold on to the thing, you're not enjoying it. You're merely holding on to it out of fear. You're only enjoying it when you let go. And when you let go, knowing that it's not going anywhere, it's right here, then you can truly enjoy. And you don't need to covet anybody else's wealth because it's all you, it's all them. You are also them. So what's there to covet? So now the break that we're getting to is, so I'm going to take the first few words of the first half and the first few of the second half. The yogis come to their sense of divinity through experience, through the process of experiencing. When you sit in meditation, the enjoyment that you feel. A lot of Hindu gurus have names that end in Ananda, A-N-A-N-D-A, Ananda. It's joy or bliss. But bliss is a small word compared to this. It's unconditional bliss. And you're so filled with that. And that is what yogis use to know what's good and what's not good, because you're filled with bliss all the time. Because of course, what else is there, right? That experience is usually fleeting. And because it's fleeting, we run after it. And the more we run, the more it fleets. That's its nature. So the yogis decided to heck with that. I'm going to sit right here and let me see how it catches up. And so deep in the yoga tradition, we don't have time to get into it right now, but we realize that seeking after things is only postponing our enjoyment and shortening our enjoyment of that thing. Right? When you want something, for example, you order this fancy thing on Amazon, and you're excited by your Googling of it, you're searching on Amazon, you're thinking about it for 4 days and thinking, I think I'm going to order it. You order it, you're super thrilled. And then it says, okay, I'm about to ship. It's a 2-day shipping, but I'm going to deliver it in 1 day, coming tomorrow. Super excited, super excited. You check your mail 3 times to see if it's arriving. It arrives at your door, the bell rings, the guy goes away. Trump, the UPS delivery guy, goes away. So now you have the thing in your hand, you're like supremely happy. Your bliss cannot be measured in any quantity. You're extremely happy. You unwrap this thing, you take this thing out, and now you're holding it in your hand, whatever this thing is. Can you be any more happy? You cannot be any more happy. But then you have the thing and it's gone. It just goes away. And so in one of the books, several books, this is described in gory detail, minute by fraction, is that the off-peak happiness, the blip happens just the moment when you're about to touch and you kind of touch the thing and then it's gone. And then they said, okay, wait a second, freeze frame, turn around, show me what's going on inside. They said, okay, why is this a happy moment for this individual? All is well in the world. You no longer want the thing because it is right here in your hand. You cannot want it because it is right here in your hand. So, is the thing bringing you happiness? No. The thing itself, that it blips and goes away because you want another thing. So it's the not wanting the thing. It's the scratching of the itch that you wanted. Right? You're not scratching yourself right now, just gratuitously. It's just not something you do. You're only scratching it when it's itching, and you scratched it and it's gone, and you're not a freak who's going to keep scratching it. And it's that no longer itches. That's ridiculous, right? And so the question is, what is the true nature of happiness? It is that it is inside us. Our outbound tendencies ceased for that fraction of the moment we were holding that thing for the first time, and then those outbound tendencies have evaporated, and I'm no longer. And now I was back in, and I was happy for a moment, and then I'm back out, and I'm rooting around for something else I want. Right? And so the true source of happiness is within. Ananda. So that is the immediate, without any media, the immediate contact with our own true nature, the two birds finally meeting, is the moment that brings us happiness. Right? So in the material world, anything that brings us even fleeting bliss is a good sign that this has some divinity in it. Right? And with that, I hope your hands are washed. I got a lecture demonstration kind of thing going on. So this, I'm going to just show this to the camera. So this is jalebi. It's an Indian sweet. What it is it's fermented dough, which is fried, of course, deep fried, and then soaked in syrup, in sugar syrup. So if you're avoiding sugar, this is not the same thing, right? But this is a great traditional sweet. It's fantastic. It's called jalebi, and I will pass it on to you. Sure. Jalebi, J-A-L-E-B-I. Now, here's the thing. Is dough sweet? Have you had dough by yourself? Not sweet, right? You should certainly take more than that because we'll never finish it this way. Yeah, that's a good one. Yes. That'll help. So here's the thing. The dough itself is not sweet. The yogurt that it's fermented is not sweet either, right? But it's suffused. It's filled with sweetness because infused in it is this taste of sweetness. It's the same with material things and material world. It's in itself, the material world does not bring in joy. Material objects, material things, the material world itself does not bring in joy. All the contacts with joy that we have, fleeting as they are this glimpse of divinity that we have. Those two birds finally seeing each other for a moment and recognizing each other. That sweetness of experience that comes. That sweetness of experience is known to every tradition, in every language you know it. You know it because people are people. You know, in culture, in high culture, when you sing, there is beauty in it. When you paint, there is beauty in it. When you tell a good joke, there is beauty in it. When you win at a lottery, there's some sort of excitement. All of these experiences bring some quantum of joy, certainly. Right? You doing some service for your loved one, your children, your parents, your husband, your wife, your friends, your community, doing things for others brings you joy. All of these things bring us this taste of divinity, does it not? And the English word for that and I'm sure you already know this, is enthusiasm. You're just trembling with enthusiasm, right? But what does enthusiasm mean? You know the etymology, right? Enthusiasm, you don't? Enthusiasm actually means to be filled with God, literally. Thu is thou, Thou, which is God, right? So enthusiasm is to be filled with God. So when you're filled with God, you're enthusiastic and energetic and jumping with joy and trembling with excitement. That is enthusiasm. And that is to be filled with God. Now we can take a break. The restroom's down the street. There's some water here. We'll take a couple of minutes break just to air ourselves out and to bring down my enthusiasm levels. Any questions while we're on the break?
Why did you choose this particular tree?
This? Because I can tell the story. It's not sweet in itself, but it's filled with sweetness. If you suck on this for long enough, you'll suck out all the syrup, it won't be sweet anymore. That's the true nature of material existence. Where you suck on it long enough, and it's no longer exciting. You're just doing it because you've been doing it. It no longer brings joy. Because you've taken the divinity out of it. It's just a material thing. You just do it because you've been doing it. And you shouldn't do it. It no longer has any juice in it. So, yeah.
Is that the idea though, too, that the sweetness needs a vessel to be delivered?
Yeah.
To our mouths?
Action and service
Yeah.
are a vessel. The temple itself could be a vessel and a reminder of that sweetness. And a lot of Hindu traditions are about sustaining this. I've often wondered about older cultures. Fast food is a very American thing for sure, and very new thing, because you're supposed to enjoy your food. And I notice how older cultures seem to have 6-course meals, 7-course meals. You wonder, what the heck are they eating? They're not eating more. They're just pacing themselves. Because the enjoyment is no longer, I was hungry, I gobbled a whole bunch of stuff, and now I'm unhappy because I ate so much. So there was this peak of this moment when I was just about to put the burger in my mouth, right? Versus not so fast food, where over 2 hours you're enjoying your meal and you're enjoying every minute of those 2 hours. Right? And so I feel older cultures figure out a way to sustain their high states for longer. Because why else are we alive? I mean, I'll counter to that for some bit, but yeah, questions, comments? Okay, a little historical narrative. This temple was, the foundation was broken in 1984, so it's been in the works since the late 70s. But in the 70s, you might remember somebody had Kool-Aid packets lying around, and 900 people drank it and did not do well for it. So cults were not welcome in the country at the time. So anything that kind of looked cultish was not welcome. So, and no one would want a cult in their neighborhood. So originally, this was supposed to be in Pleasanton. We had a piece of land. So they're like, wait a second, this is another cult. We don't need more woo-woo cults in this city. So they got us out of there. So the interfaith community, this is the classic joke setting of a rabbi and a priest and a Hindus got kicked together, not at a bar, but at the civic center. So they helped us petition to the city and say, look, these people need a home. So we're very grateful to the interfaith community for this home, because it would not be possible without interfaith support. In fact, I give talks at Tri-Valley Interfaith, and I met one of the pastors who's involved in this exercise. So we're very welcoming of interfaith, because it exists because of all the support.
Did you say it was called Tribal Interfaith?
Tri-Valley.
Oh, Tri-Valley.
So Leah, who was an earlier chaplain, she's out there.
Okay.
All right, break's over in about a couple of minutes, so we we need to stretch out, this would be a good time.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the topic of how you relate to God.
Yes.
I'm a polytheist tradition rooted in Europe and very much believe that the goddesses are real, as real as I am.
Yes.
And that there's a universal, we're all, coming from the source. And so, is it similar in that way that your gods and deities are very real?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And okay, I just want to.
No, so the European, if you look at pre-Christian European traditions, they're very similar to Hindu traditions. You could actually reverse engineer your tradition more by talking to the Hindus, because we could tell you more about your theology. The cultic traditions, the Celtic traditions, all the traditions that you had in the European regions, either they had constant communication or they were actually one tradition at one point. But the peoples, they talked to each other, and the traditions had very strong binds.
This chasing the fleeting bliss is, I think a lot about addiction and alcoholism.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just all.
It very much is. So yogis know a lot about that, and I'm just surprised no one talks to yogis about addiction and alcoholism. So there are uppers and there are downers, right? So alcohol is a downer, but meth is an upper. Every drug is either an upper or a downer. That's how it works, right? And you should talk to a good yogi about uppers and downers, because this is our specialization. Our calling card is uppers and downers, right? This side and this side. This is the downer. This is the upper. Yeah. Good. Upper. Sorry. Okay. So the yogis spent all of their thousands of years of tradition figuring out up, down, and balance, the three minds, and how to get these systems amped up or down. All the practices. So all the chakra system, all of that is based on the soul. But no one talks to us about addiction, so we're not giving advice. No one's asking me, I'm not telling you.
But a lot of people who get sober are very drawn to yoga practice and even Hinduism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sustained highs, you can get sustained highs, with no side effect, other than being infectiously happy. Yeah, which comes to a fun question. Another part of the conversation, or another evening cocktail conversation, would be spiritual but not religious kind of thing. In the tradition, religious, we're not a religion in the religion sense of the word, because religion means it has to have a certain set of things. We're more a spiritual tradition that you could call a religion, but it's not the same thing. So in the Hindu tradition, you could be spiritual but not religious. You could be religious but not spiritual. You could be all of the above. You could be an atheist. All good. You could totally be an atheist and be a Hindu. You're not outside the bounds of the tradition.
Interesting. That might be worth repeating when everyone else.
When it comes back, yeah.
That's another reason why alcoholics and addicts would be
Yeah.
drawn to.
Yeah. So a lot of the reasons why Buddhism is interesting to the Western world is because it's a pure spiritual thing with no requirements. Right? It doesn't require, right? And so Buddhism is a sort of special case of Hinduism, where Hinduism is all that and a bunch of other stuff as well. And so Alan Watts, if you know Alan Watts, used to call it Buddhism is Hinduism repackaged for expert. Oh yeah, look it up. Yeah, Alan Watts. He repeats this in several of his talks up in Marin County, on a board in Sausalito.
That's great.
Miss, if you don't mind me asking, who's the Swamini that you study? Swatman. Are you in Portland?
No, well, she's out of Eugene, but
Yeah.
she lives in Berkeley, Saraswati.
Okay.
So, but I always mess up her first name. Dayananda Saraswati.
Okay.
We call her Swami.
Swamini, that's good.
Yeah.
Is she part of Arsha Vidya? Or?
Yeah, well, she's part of the Dayananda.
So Arsha Vignana. Okay. Yeah. So Swamini Swatma.
I could write it down.
I'll look again. That's all. So we're the institute I run. One of our founders is from the Dayananda tradition.
Oh, yeah?
We know them, some of them.
Yeah. So she teaches at the GTU.
Oh, really?
And it's sort of her way of being a Swami in the world is to do it in academic settings.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting. Nancy and I took a course from her last year, and then because we were both already sort of Hindu inclined,
Sure.
and then we just stayed with her Swami in the end. Now we travel with her and,
Nice.
and study with her. But she taught a class at Pacific School of Religion
Sure.
that was called the Hindu Theology of Oneness.
Mhm.
And it was for Muslims, two Christians, Nancy and I, which are interfaith. And the entire time, it was Vedanta, but
Sure.
the entire time we were sort of like in comparative religion class.
Nice.
Just by the nature of how
Because it
people
goes
were like,
into-
is it like this or is it like that?
Nice. That must be a fun time.
It was so much fun.
So I'm looking forward to seeing Dr. Rita Sharma and Daniel Lehman and Rabbi Lehman on this Sunday. They're coming to, so we're graduating our counselors this Sunday. We didn't want to call them Hindu chaplains because it sounded like a Christian imam kind of deal. So we're just calling them counselors of Hindu tradition. And Rabbi
How long
Lehman,
is that program?
1 year. Sundays only. Because,
Yeah.
it's a fun program, I can tell you more. All right. So we're looking forward to the GTO folks and seeing what we can do together.
What does the graduation look like? Is it a ritual?
There'll be chanting, there'll be rituals, and there'll be me speaking, the other board members speaking, and then it'll be nice. It's 1.5 hours. We just want to keep it quick and fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. If you want to come, I can invite you.
Please invite us.
I have Reverend Lauren's video on the website, so it's all kosher. Also, there's two rabbis, so I bet it's going to be kosher.
For real. And so,
Would someone mind calling everyone back in? Let's gather the sheep back in. Sorry, yes.
tell me what else your organization does.
The Hindu Community Institute. So what we're doing is kind of like the chaplaincy program, but essentially focus on the Hindu tradition out. Our thing is, look, we know some things from the Hindu tradition. Let's figure out how to put those to use. So no one has to deal with turmeric lattes at Starbucks anymore. Yeah, if you want to make turmeric lattes, we'll tell you how to make it. It's all good. Yeah.
Is that day one?
Yes, that's day one. Turmeric lattes, no can do. Starbucks, not. So but we teach Hindu tradition, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita classes. We teach contemporary psychology and counseling. We teach a bunch of other stuff. We have ER doctors coming. It's very exciting. We have 30 faculty coming, and kind of like how I'm doing this class for you. Lauren did the class for us. So we have 30 faculty. It's just really nice. It's a lot of good learning. Good learning. Sorry.
Good learning. Okay.
So we have an ER doctor who comes in and describes, here's what's really going on in the ER. So when you're helping a family, they don't know squat about what's going on. The doctor's talking some rubbish because the doctor's saying something in gobbledygook and family is like,
Yeah.
So here, that's the context you're supposed to help. Now, how are you going to help? This is the place. Very exciting. So that's the program. That's what we do. Are we all back in?
What time?
It's Sundays. Oh, the graduation is this Sunday, 9:30 to 1 o'clock. It's in the Vegas. If you're interested, you send me an email. I'll send you an invite.
Okay,
Come on over.
perfect,
There'll be vegetarian food.
perfect.
Yeah, what's not to like? Is everyone in?
One person in the back.
The doors reference, by the way. Is everybody in?
Oh, yeah.
The ceremony is about to be.
Yeah.
Is it too cold? What? It's cold? What's going on?
I'm looking for Tylenol, ibuprofen, something.
No problem.
So I'm thinking Nancy, I for sure have some. I for sure have some. Oh, Nancy has that, yeah.
Well,
Thank you. Have it? Did you get some?
Jesse has some.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So it's Swamini,
Swapna Vidyananda. So that Swamini is also, we're very friendly with her.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're very friendly with her.
fantastic. So we have her video on our website. She will come teach this
Yes,
year.
from our
She's
shop.
great. Yeah, Arsha Vidyananda.
Yeah,
She's fantastic.
she is fantastic.
Good. Please come.
Yeah.
As Swamini is,
Because I'm thinking maybe of taking internship with her in the spring. to-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so because maybe looking at Brahmacharya or something like that.
yeah,
Or
fantastic.
maybe yoga jar, I'm not sure. It's
Umaji,
being reviewed.
Umaji,
Yeah.
CSE, yeah, we're very friendly with her as well.
Okay,
Umaji, right? Ellen Grace O'Brien.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yoga jar.
Yeah, so she's
Oh,
on
we're
our
all the
faculty.
same.
Yeah, we're very friendly.
We're all in the lineage, all coming from yoga jar.
So I'm a Kriya Yogi, so I have extra,
Yeah,
I get extra credit with her.
Oh, okay. Well, we're home.
All right, welcome back. So I'm about to tell you a little more about visiting a temple. But before that, I must address a few other questions. So the breadth of the Hindu tradition, when you meet a Hindu, they don't necessarily need to believe anything specific at all. So the range of Hinduism could be that they are cultural Hindus, whatever that means, but generally oneness of being is expected. They don't need to believe in a kind of God with a particular name. They do not need to believe in any kind of gods. They could be atheistic and still be Hindus. Totally okay. In fact, Vedanta, the fleshiest fruit of Hindu philosophy, could be read both ways. You could read Vedanta philosophy as being atheistic, because you can. You could also read Vedanta philosophy as being deeply devotional. And so you could call it Advaita, which is non-dualism, or Vishishta Advaita, which is special instance of non-dualism. And so the Hindu tradition has a wide range of things. What is asked for generally on the philosophical side is that you be open to questioning your ignorance about the true nature of things. But most Hindus are generally not aware of it. Culturally, only the philosophical sort of folks tend to think more about this question of what is the nature of truth and reality.
So is this what would be a distinction between Jnana and Bhakti?
Yeah, between what and bhakti?
Is it, you say Jnana?
Oh no, Vedanta. Oh no.
No.
Oh, Jnana. Oh yeah. Jnana. So Jnana, right? Jnana. Yeah. So yeah. So Jnana and Bhakti, that could be a difference. Now you could be a Gnani and a Bhakt simultaneously. You're not, so in fact the apex of the Hindu tradition is you're all three simultaneously. So there's this rice, milk, and sugar thing, kheer it's called in the Hindu tradition. It's a dessert that you have. You might have had it if you've ever visited. So kheer, it's rice and milk and sugar. So the sweetness of bhakti, that's what I'm going to tell you. The robustness of karma yoga, right? Karma yoga is yoga in action. service, and the clarity of Jnana Yoga, which is to see, to know truth. All three are required. You do not pick one path. And that's often, even amongst Hindus, that's often a confusion that I'm a Jnana Yogi, I'm not a Bhakti, right? You could be a Jnana Yogi or a Karma Yogi and not be into devotional service, or you could be all three, right? And the way to think about this conceptually is there are ladders, and then you get to the roof, right? So karma and jnana, action and wisdom, are ladders that you get to go to the roof, but you got to step off that into the roof yourself, then you're off the ladder. And that stepping off is devotion. And you could, therefore, jump right off from here to the top of the roof with pure devotion. Because what do you care for the ladder? So you could do bhakti without doing any jnana or karma. And most Hindu people that go to temples care not too much about the philosophy, because the devotion is all they need. And in that, and I've been taking these Yale Bible studies classes, fantastic classes. They're on Yale courses. Go to YouTube, fantastic courses. So Christine Hayes, I think, and Yale courses on YouTube. Look at Old Testament and the New Testament. And Dale Martin. Dale Martin is New Testament. He's brilliant. He was bald like me, but he's far more articulate. He does a fantastic job. But in that final thing, which is that devotion is all you need. Hinduism is identical to the spirit of Islam, the spirit of some form of Christianity. But devotion is all you got to have, because I will do the rest of the work, God says.
Can you repeat the names? Christine Hayes?
Yeah, just look at Yale courses on YouTube. Yale courses, okay, and Bible. Just write 3 words in YouTube. Yale courses Bible. And two people. Christine Hayes, I think, will show up, and Dale Martin. Dale Martin is New Testament. He's brilliant. And Christine Hayes is great as well. But she covers the Old Testament, and she's a great scholar as well. So in that bhakti, the Hindu tradition is identical to the Abrahamic traditions. That, look, you just got to remember, chant the name, remember, sing glories, and come and surrender. Because ultimately, that's what you're going to have. Just surrender full worship. But the one thing that the Hindus focus on a little bit more is, because of the thousands of years of sort of accumulated knowledge, is they focus on the heart. Not as much the head. So Jnana Yoga, a lot of times people think it's about intellectual understanding of the truth. The problem with intellectual understanding is the problem that Western philosophy has had in the last, post-enlightenment in the last couple of centuries, is this. Same that Plato had as well with his stuff, is you can intellectually arrive at the exact same conclusion, but you're not going to believe it. That sounds like a BuzzFeed headline, but it's true. You can arrive at the conclusion that all of this is not as it appears, intellectually, but you're not going to believe it because your heart doesn't believe it, right? So what's going to happen is, which is what Western philosophy has been doing, is rechecking their math. Okay, maybe I made the wrong assumption. Maybe I went into a deep end somewhere. Let me come back to it. Humanist, okay, not so much humanist, okay, post-humanist. I mean, so they've tried different ways of reworking their math. But eventually they'll come back to the same conclusion, which is in the matrix. All of this is an illusion. But I tell you this is an illusion, and you're thinking, okay, I get it, Mr. Rastogi, but I see you. So how is this an illusion, right? And that's the problem that the Western mind comes to, because you're thinking with your head and you're logicking with your head. You got to logic with the heart. And so the Hindu tradition works at it through the heart. All devotion and service is about cultivating the heart. You see the Krishnas, the Hare Krishnas, the thing that they say is when they chant the name of the God, they're singing, they're chanting, they're dancing, they look happy, right? They're happy not because they're bald like me, but they're happy because they're somehow, the act of singing and dancing is bringing them this immense joy, in the name of God. They call it polishing the mirror of the heart. Chet darpana marjana, polishing the mirror of the heart. One sec. One second, I'm gonna have to power up this guy, otherwise. Hold on. This is a little bit. It's still working. Okay. So polishing the mirror of the heart. Why do you need to polish the mirror of the heart? Because the heart is a mirror. The world that you see around you is a reflection through your heart. You see the world as you are. So to see a better world, you gotta just work on your mirror, polish your mirror, and when it shows the world exactly as it is, it shows up as being friendly, as being kind, as being wonderful, and filled with opulence and wealth. And I'm using these words because you're going to go inside. Opulence is one of the properties of God. Shri, Ashwarya. Shri means wealth. S-H-R-E-E, which is often a epithet you call it. Shri, this Mr. And Ashwarya, wealth. So when you say God is great, Allahu Akbar, what does it mean? It does not mean that God is great. It means that whatever is great is godly, right? The definition of God is that there is no definition, and that's your definition. I am who I am, right? So the point of this is, Shri, these are the properties of God. How may we know that this is godly? Is that we're continuing to do it, and it's still bringing us joy. Now think about all the things that you do at work or in your life. There are things that you do, you kind of like them for the first 2 minutes, and then you're like, okay, you know what, I'm done with it. I like this ice cream, I like the first 2 bites, but now my brain is freezing, and really, can I get rid of the rest of it? Right? Those things that you can only do and you saturate out. Saturation is the nature of this material existence. You saturate out of everything. You do not get infinite joy out of everything. But you can get infinite joy out of only one source. And that source must be divine. Continued joy. Right? And so coming back to the Hindu tradition. And so all the techniques of devotional Hinduism, the temple visits, the chanting, the recitation of the name, all of those are connecting through the heart. Because only through the heart you connect to God. And I'm going to detour here for a couple of seconds. This is known to every culture in mankind, in humanity. Every culture has language around, well, those 2 hearts met. But this, I came back with a heavy heart. Oh, when she separated, my heart was broken. Or when I got this, I was very lighthearted. Right? Why do we say these things about the heart? Is it this physical heart on the left side of the chest? Or is it this the psychic heart where I asked you to do this, namaskar, at the beginning? Surely you experience it right here in the center of your chest. A load, an elephant putting their foot on the middle of your chest for months can feel like the worst kind of depression. And this Junior Kennedy girl who died a couple of days ago, her friend said that she was saying she had this massive load on her chest for months that she couldn't get rid of. And so she committed suicide. What is that load on the chest? It's a closed heart. It's a heavy heart. It's a cold heart. English words, they're not Sanskrit. Right? So how do you have a light heart? How do you have a warm, flowing, gooey, happy heart? One way is to cry. When you cry, you feel much better. So you could go to a Greek tragedy and cry and come back with a somewhat uplifted heart, surely. We don't cry enough in this culture. But there are good kind of cries as well. You could have happy tears. Happy tears because you're excited. Happy tears because you're so moved by something. Happy tears because you're chanting and you do not give a damn what the other person thinks. You're going to let those tears flow. Right? So what is a technique? What are those technologies for happy tears? If a culture lasts for thousands of years, you figure stuff out. The Hindu tradition figures those stuff out and encapsulate those in rituals and form. But please don't confuse the form with, oh, this is idol worship and therefore that. This is not idol worship of the type that is decried in the Western system. This is a very different. It's cutting edge technology even now. But it's technology of the heart. Now, when we go into the temple, we will be taking our shoes off because this is a holy place. Shoes are not welcome. Dirt is not welcome, basically. So there's a place for ablutions. You wash your hands and feet outside generally. You're visiting them at their home. So that's the order. The convention is that you always go to Ganesha first, because Ganesha's job is he's remover of obstacles. So you want to go to him first because he's your reminder. He's going to make sure that there's no problem with this. And then you go around. Visiting, you don't need to say anything. You could say anything. You could chant your prayers. You could just be in the presence. Being in the presence is all that I'm asked for. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Phalam pushpam patram toyam. Bring me anything out of devotion. It could be a fruit, a flower, a leaf, or even water. Your breath could be an offering. Because what matters, because everything is God's. So it's not how many dollars you're bringing, but the spirit with which you bring it, but your sense of surrender that you bring it. So even water can be offered. Flowers are all generally offered. You'll see beautiful decorations. Other things you'll notice is each deity has their home, of course, and they're all very interesting shapes. So I urge you to pay attention, very close attention to their form. There'll be goddesses. There'll be Ganesha. There'll be God, forms. There'll be abstract forms like an egg form, which is Shiva, and you'll see him as well. But surrounded with beautiful flowers and gold and silver, very, very nice. But in many cases, the goddesses all carry weapons. Yeah, we're a pro-gun culture, so they have weapons. So they'll have like a spear or a bow, that kind of stuff. They all have their own specific. You know them from their signs, and their signs are the weapons they carry. They all have a ride, because you got to have a ride, right? So like every good bank heist, you got to have a getaway car outside. So you'll see a bull outside, and you'll see an eagle, human form eagle, but he's got an eagle, because those are the two rides of the two specific gods that are here. But the goddess rides an elephant, she rides a bull in one case, and a lion in another, an owl in another. So they just ride different things. They all have rides.
Is it okay to take pictures?
It is not okay to take pictures. It says so there. There's pictures on that. Okay, and then so we're buying like this, and just bring your attention to your house. And then there's usually prasad given there, which is the offering is then shared out with us. If your tradition does not allow you to take prasad, it's okay. No one's going to. We may have prasad. Usually this temple does have prasad. What else? Also, the other thing I want to tell you is the Hindu tradition is very nature. So you were asking, we're very in tune with nature, right? So the Hindu tradition is extremely sensitive to what's going on in nature. So the sun, the moon, the stars are very important to us. So astrology is big in the Hindu tradition for that reason. So, and they're all physically, they're like, the sun is not just the sun is a god with a name and a form and sort of a story. So my family traces ourselves to the sun god. That's my family lore. But that's how these things are told to us. So the services that are going on depend on the time of the day, which depends on where the sun is at any given point in time. It depends on the kind of the day of the calendar, the lunar calendar. So yesterday, for example, was full moon. Today also was a full moon, but yesterday we celebrated full moon. Yeah. Yesterday morning I was here, and this place parking lot was filled with people sitting, and they were all there in their cotton dhotis. We wear a white thread in some parts of the Hindu tradition, and every year, once a year, you have to replace it with a new white thread because you can't, right? So yesterday morning was the day. Hundreds of people were here, changing their threads and getting new ones in. And that's because yesterday was full moon. We celebrate, every full moon is a celebration of something. Every 11th day of the moon is a fasting day. Every no moon can be a fasting day as well. So there's a lot very sensitive to what's going on with the stars, the sun, and the moon. So one of the collection over there you're going to see are the 9 planets they're called. But they're not 9 planets as in way there's no Pluto there, right? There are 9 planets in the Hindu astrology, right? So it begins with, so we're going to see those as well. So people who have astrological issues, like then they can come there and ask for calmness from the astrology side. You good? So should we take a look? What is the time?
11:06.
Exactly, this is great timing. So we're going to go from here into the temple, and then we'll come back and debrief. Is that
Can
good?
I leave my things
You
here?
can leave your things here. I'm going to just close the door. And stop your camera. Any questions while we go? Yes, Newton.
Should we walk over?
Yeah, we'll walk over here. Yeah, leave your shoes here. Okay. Usually there's a shoe room that we do.
We can like get a flower from
Yeah,
outside and.
we can buy flowers. Sit down to the main office.
Okay.
Let's go to the main office. We'll go from there.
Do people bring food?
People bring food, yeah, all the time.
Should we bring up the piece of?
No, you eat from it. You can't.
Yeah, it has to be pure, like untouched.
Now that you eat it.
Well, I wasn't gonna bring mine.
We'll just lock it and I'll tell them to open it. It is not. Come right in. You can come right in from here. Because in my infinite wisdom, I logged one door.
Yeah.
Moving over and not just because the seat was really sticky.
Okay, I won't.
That was utterly confusing and gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just so much. That's just.
Well, it did go really fast.
Yeah. It's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. That's what it
But
is.
you know what, I feel like if it was slowed down, I'd still.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still so much.
There's so much, it's so overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think it was.
So too. To keep it moving.
Probably done this. It ain't as first already.
Okay, we're done.
Sort of reminded me of last night how my eyes were just kind of like rolling by the end, even though it was incredible.
I felt bad, but I was like, I'm not able to like
Can't take it anymore.
piece together what's been shared with me like adequately.
Yeah.
I like this photo.
It's a good thing.
Put the mic back to you. All right. Now, welcome back. Reflections. Yes,
Can you tell me the significance of bare feet?
the bare
It's in
feet.
very many cultures.
Yeah. Bare feet, so when you're visiting them at their home, we leave shoes outside our home in general in the Indian system. Because there's dirt, there's you gotta wash your feet. So we leave shoes outside. When you're visiting somebody at their home, the guards at their home, you have to leave shoes out because of that reason. That's the rules of their homes are that. We leave shoes out. Yes.
So the offerings, so here, the folks went to buy it, but I mean, is it people bring offerings from their homes, or is
Yeah.
there like a system?
So you
So,
saw
like,
my wife sitting there. She had a bag with fruits and a basket. She just brought it from home.
Okay,
You can bring flowers and fruits from home. Yeah. People cook food and bring it. Yeah. There's very nice prasads out there right now if you want it.
yeah,
There's all types of rice. There's yogurt rice. There's tamarind rice, which is kind of tangy, and there's also sweet rice and.
nice.
You guys, we can all go and get some. You do it?
Now or at the end? Does it matter?
You want to wait? You can wait till the end. It's all good.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, the food's there. But the food might not last. I'm just saying. Okay, let's go get it. We can talk while we're waiting. It's all good. So we're getting some of the prasad. Just see what the food is. We're going back in there, and you see to the left where the people are there. There'll be food inside the building. I'll come.
And there are families there, yes? And
Yes, yes,
what
yes,
the
yes.
families are just being in the temple together?
Yeah.
They come as a family.
They come as a family. Yeah.
There was a little girl with her head in shade.
Yeah. So yes. So generally. Missing out on the good food?
I didn't know where everyone went. I
No,
came
we
back
just
from the
went out.
bathroom and everyone was
Oh,
gone.
wait. Sorry. You go out to the left, there's food.
Okay.
Or you can do it on the way out. So. Right. Any questions? As we said, what's your reflection? How did you feel about the temple?
It's so complicated. Yeah. It's really, really complicated. And it's like, I'm of the kind of person that wants to understand it all.
Hmm.
And that will never happen, even if I had a whole lifetime.
So the Hindu conception of divinity is a very personal connection. So there are millions of God, forms of God. What matters is the form of God that appeals to your heart. And that's all the Ishta Devta is. Ishta means dear. So the God that is dear to you. And the form of divinity that appeals to your heart is all the form that you need, because what matters is that you're connecting your heart to the divine. And the rest is more detailed than you need.
So could a person come here and just come to the temple and spend time here?
You can just come sit. Yeah.
Figure it out.
They have closing hours, but other than that, you can come. And so that comes to the question of who's a Hindu and who's not a Hindu.
Yeah.
Europe, in our tradition, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. So to us, and Sanatana Dharma is not our creation. We are discovering it, because these truths are not Hindu truths or Indian truths. They're just truths. And so we're discovering it. So anyone who's seeking after truth to us is on the same path. So we don't have boundaries saying you're a Hindu and you're not a Hindu. Anyone who thinks they're Hindu are Hindu. So if you say you're Hinduish, you're Hindu, because there's no Hinduish.
Can you repeat that again in Sanskrit?
The Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudha means earth. So all everyone living on this earth is a family. Kutumba means family. So all the world is one family. So Hindu tradition, you could, if your question is, can I, as someone not born into a Hindu family, can I come and visit? You can absolutely come and visit. There's no problem.
And just because I'm not born into a Hindu family, but I might still resonate with one or more of the
Forms, yeah.
forms.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's not, there's nothing holding you back. There's no. So we don't have time for that longish conversation right now, but in general, think of I said there's no time, but I'm still going to do it. So there are things that you define, right? And then there are things that you know from their heart. And there's a difference in those two knowings. When you define something, you usually define the border, the boundary. And so in essence, what you're defining is that which it is not. Right? You define the other and you say, this is it. So Hinduism and even Buddhism is similar in that sense, is more of the heart variety, where it says you have to know it from knowing, but not from its definitional boundaries, because definitions could be wrong and change with time. But knowing is knowing. So every tradition that sort of tries to define fails at it ultimately, because over time things change, boundaries change. You know, you're in UK and you drive on the left side of the road. You come to the US, you drive on the right side of the road. Who is to say which is more moral or ethical? They're both moral. Ethical depends on where you're driving. It is immoral to drive on the wrong side of the road. It depends on which side of the road you're in, which country you're in. So once you know the core, the essence of something, then you know the thing. But if you know the enemy of that thing by its boundary, you've only discovered the enemy. You haven't known the thing itself. And that's the sort of foundational difference in how the Hindu philosophical tradition sees it. But Hindu philosophical tradition wasn't all like loosey-goosey vague. Hindu philosophy is very sophisticated. And so Buddha taught in a language other than Sanskrit. He taught in Pali, which is a sort of a more folk version of language at the time. But Buddhist scholars really truly prospered when they switched to Sanskrit as their default language, because all the terminology they were looking for was available in Sanskrit. If I told you Einstein says E is equal to mc squared, you know nothing about it. E and M and C are just alphabets in your letters in an alphabet. You don't know the physics, but there's a shorthand for that physics, the rules of which determine that E equals mc squared. You got to know the language. So the language of physics is now English and mathematics today. But the language of spirituality in the Hindu tradition is Sanskrit. The nuance available, the words available, the vocabulary available, the experiences available are much more richer than other traditions. So I have a high horse that I get onto when somebody says meditation and mindfulness. Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations. Meditations are what you write and think. Dhyan is not what you write or think. It is not affirmation that you repeat ad nauseum. That's good for Gwyneth Paltrow. It's not good for what you're doing. That's dharana. You do. That is a form. I hasten to add. That is a form of premeditation where you take a seed and you recite it. That's holding. Dharana means to hold. You hold something, but then you let go. Dhyan is not that. So, but when you convert it to English, the message loses its vigor and its meaning. If I say I meditate, you say you meditate, who knows what we're talking about anyway at this point? Because John Kabat-Zinn says, I'm doing mindfulness, and you might say, this is great, he's doing mindfulness, but I'm trying to empty my mind, so what is it full of? Satan's filling up the mind, that's what some people say. So you get what's going on, right? So the vocabulary of Hindu science philosophy is very robust. So I'll give you an example. The Hindu logic, so there's a whole school of philosophy called Sankhya, which literally means numbers. Sankhya means number. And the whole philosophy school is called numbers because everything is broken down to numbers. There are 5 of this, 6 of that, 1 of this, 3 of that, and this, it's complete, it's very mathematically precise. Its name is Sankhya, so it's numbers. So Vedanta and Sankhya they talk to each other. So logic, Indian logic was very sophisticated. So I don't mean to give you the impression that it's all boo-boo, fuzzy experience is bliss kind of thing only. Very sophisticated logic. And an example of that is where there's a yes or no, right? You say good or evil, yes or no. But there's a logic which has 4 states. There's Jan logic that has 7 states. Neither yes, not no, neither no. Yes, no, neither yes, neither no, right? Then we have 3 more states. You understand how sophisticated this can get? These guys were super sophisticated and extremely aggressive with their assertions. Schools of philosophy were extremely sophisticated and they would duke it out. They would hold competitions, and if you won, you had to convert to the other guy's school. So high stakes.
You know, I'm sorry that you just blew my mind. Because so much of Western culture is in the yes or no mode. And lots of people say, well, it's neither.
Yeah.
But that in our philosophy is not in our political philosophy.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's a choice. Yeah, right.
Well, George W. Bush, God bless him, says you're either with us or against us. My question is, are those the only 2 choices? Why are those the only 2 choices available?
And who is also the way?
Yeah, you define us. So in the Buddhist sort of system, they have this thing called mu, unask the question, because it's a stupid question. Because it's like saying, sir, have you stopped beating your wife? And the answer to that can neither be yes or no, because what if you don't beat your wife? And you say, yes, I've stopped beating my wife, so you are beating your wife? It's a stupidly formulated question. So you would say, that's a stupid question, my friend, I'm not going to answer it. You can't do that in a binary system. In the Buddhist system, you'd say, unask the question. It's a stupid question. Right? And in the Hindu system, you would say, well, you'd say other things. The whole point of this is binaries is not the only state. This good versus evil is a very, very Disney-fied version of choices available to us. That's the Hindu point of view.
That's where a lot of us are very much trying to deconstruct binary ways of everything.
Yeah. And going past binaries is it's been a long project in the Hindu tradition. Have I answered some of the questions at least that you had? Are there things that I can answer for you now?
So, my question is right this second, is because, again, I've just got enough in me now to study that I don't know a lot of things. But what I'm finding is like, I try really hard with my Western mind to like grasp these concepts. Okay, I can define it, grasp it, and write it down, and memorize it and all this. And it was like, no.
Yeah.
Like it won't do that. It's like, it won't stick at all. And I was like, gosh, I must be stupid because I can't I can't seem to grasp this. And so now that since I'm starting to let it go, it's like I'm being invited in to look at it and just be it, be with it. It's just such a different approach, and it's just been happening to me within the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Ooh. Like, and and so and I was just telling Lisa, it's like I would like to know how to ask those kinds of questions so they're not moved,
Yeah.
Because I don't, but my Western mind doesn't really know how to formulate those kinds of questions.
The emphasis post sort of enlightenment on reasoning and logic has led to a point where the Western mind is conditioned, myself included. I would not call myself an Eastern mind. I think in English, so I'm as much a part of this culture as you all are. And the Western mind is designed to think in logical mental terms, but that is not the only way of perceiving. And we've lost on the intuitive capability. And the problem is, like you're saying, this is complicated. Of course it is complicated. If you grasp at the edges, it's complicated. Go to the heart, and the heart is very simple. And a good example of that I use in my talks is if you ever go to a third world country, you'd know that the street urchins that are trying to sell you trinkets, they look at you, they kind of suss you out by the way you're dressed. You're American. They speak with you with an American accent. They see the Japanese tourist, and you will be shocked. They're speaking with that tourist in Japanese. And you're like, it's a street urchin. The guy has not done a PhD in linguistics. How does he speak with Japanese tourists in Japanese, the French people in French, and the Germans in German, right? Because all they need to know is a few words. All they need to know is that a transaction is about to happen. They have the intuition, and the vocabulary follows, right? And so the challenge with the Western concept is we want to know it. Tell me the facts, tell me the forms, tell me the details. The problem is you're going to get lost in the thicket of details. A lot of the Western Indologists have this problem where they might be Indophiles, they might actually like Indians and Hindus, but they don't follow the tradition. They don't practice it. Because it doesn't come from their heart, they're having to remember stuff. They misremember stuff. They misbucket things into buckets because that's how you remember stuff, by grouping them. So what happens is you haven't understood it. You have merely remembered it, right? And so, the way to do this tradition is to work to your heart and understand the intuition by doing it. You did not learn to ride a bike by taking classes in fluid dynamics, the mechanics of resistance and the mechanics of chain moving bodies, right? You don't have, I'm a mechanical engineer through my undergrad, but you don't need to learn any of that to drive your car. No one tells you need to know automotive mechanics or fluid mechanics or whatever. You just need to know this. You press here, it runs, and you brake here, it stops. That's all you got to know. The things you need to know are not that many. You need to know from the heart. The facts get in the way. But the Western rational mind reasons with facts. And I feel a lot of the reasons why Mr. Wall is winning is he doesn't worry about facts. He uses them to his own advantage, illicit or otherwise, where he works with emotion. He says, I'm going to appeal to an emotion, right? But you could use it for good just as well, right? Facts get in the way of the actual emotional core of anything. And yeah, so sorry. Hi horse. I'll come back. So the Hindu tradition is very experiential. You have to. So if you lived in an ashram, for example, you know what the experience is. That's really just an interesting way of experiencing. You went to the temple, you saw it the way I see it because you were hovering over my shoulder. That's a good way to experience a devotee's sort of visit and understand what's going on.
So are there similarities between temples or are they all different?
The construction of this is according to some sort of architectural standards, size and shapes of things. South Indian temples are designed with one sort of building code, so to speak, and North Indian temples have a different building code. Also, the deities, some may have only Shiva, some may have only Vishnu, but some may have only Hanuman. It just depends on who's funding the temple. But the principle remains the same.
So who might appear in the different?
Yes, which deities are reside there, yes. And usually it'll be a benefactor or someone who's has got money. So for example, this temple, I've been coming here 20 years and it's become more and more opulent over time because as Indians have become a little well off, they donate. You see a lot of gold, a lot of silver, very intricate work. All of that stuff has come over the years because people donate. And you might think they're donating for some sort of thing, that there's a quid pro quo thing happening, pay for play kind of deal where I donate and I get something back. I have not experienced that. It's not people who have come into money just feel like they need to do it because they need to do it, period. It's not that they had a deal with the devil, like, you gotta just pay. This is not that sort of thing. You just do it because you love. People, there are gym rats, there are temple rats. I'm one of those temple rats. People who come here all the time and love hanging out here. And they would do this. People, all the decorations are done, a lot of them by devotees. The garlands, we were given a different room, but they kicked me out of it because there's boxes of flowers lying there. People are making garlands out of it. So this is after you go to the other room. So it's all a lot of love that goes into this. Yes, it's very, very close-knit community in that sense. But temples vary depending on the temple you might get.
You read Sanskrit?
I do.
So do you have any thoughts about how if you read the same text in Sanskrit or in English, how that, if they even vaguely have to find each other?
You know Tertullian? Only by name. Crazy mad guy, early church guy, was kicked out eventually, I think, for being a heretic of the Christian church. I think he was a Greek-speaking Jew, from what I can tell, or a Greek-speaking Greek, who knows? Tertullian. Anyway, look him up. So one of the words that's used in the Greek Bible, the original, is metanoia. Do you know this word? I'm sure you know this from your churches, if you go to a church. Metanoia, which is a Greek word, which means the turning around. Jesus uses that word. Now, when that word metanoia is turning around, in Sanskrit, I'd call it nivritti, returning inward, not going outward, but returning in. Jesus would use that word often as a returning inward, metanoia. But when translated into English, it's called repent.
Oh my.
You know what that means? Now, you tell me if those words mean the same thing. That's all you need to know. Words change meaning. You got to go to the etymology, the source of that word. Who said it and in what context, and what was the word being said? What did they mean? When you read a translation of Sanskrit to English, you have to be buyer beware is not enough. You have to be really suspicious. There are some schools in the Hindu tradition who say, if you read this other fellow's translation of the Bhagavad Gita, for example, your entire life is ruined. Like, it's gone. Why? And they're not doing this to just merely dissuade you from the other guy, right? They're saying that this interpretation is so materialistic that any progress you would have made in your spiritual, like many lives journey, you're going to lose all of that because your conception of materialism is going to be reinforced by this nonsense. So don't read that guy's translation because he knows squat about what's being said. Read mine or read this side. So that's very important, whose translation you read. So Vedanta, you can read as a complete atheist. You could read it as a devotee. And there are atheistic schools of Vedanta all the time. But the founder of the Vedanta system, 800 AD, Shankaracharya, 32-year-old guy, he built temples all over India. Now, if he's atheistic, why would he build temples all over India? Because devotional service has a role to play in our progress. No school of thought, you can't get there by thought, by logic alone. That's why Pythagoras, Plato, all of these guys stopped because they got to the end of their thoughts. How do you go past your capability to think? You can't. You got to work with your heart. That's the vehicle. But if you don't know how to cultivate your heart, you got nothing. You're at the edge of the cliff, but you're not going to leap in. And so that's why a lot of the Hindu tradition has just focused on the heart itself, devotional service. Yes.
So a question about, it is about how the process of becoming, like the man who performed the ritual for us.
Yeah.
How did he get to that?
So he's a Shastri. Yeah. So he's a Purohit and a Shastri. So he went to a school where they taught Sanskrit chanting. He was probably born in a family. This is their family. This is what they do. And he would be sent to a school where they'd be chanting from like a little tiny kid. So he'd know a lot of Sanskrit just by heart. And then he would have gone to different schools where they would teach different rituals that are taught and tested. The other thing I should draw, I usually have a Venn diagram that I draw. Where's my Sharpie? Somebody stole my Sharpie. Oh, it's in my pocket. Okay, so so there are 4 different things. So there's a help me talk to God. Help me send prayers. So prayers is one of those circles. Explain tradition to me, rituals to me is another circle. Listen to my woes is another circle. And tell me what to do culturally, or what do our people do is another circle, right? Western systems, all of these things kind of work on Sunday morning in one place, traditionally, right? Which is for confessional work, for prayers, for for personal salvation, and for just cultural advice. You go to basically one place, one guy has a collar, right? In the Hindu tradition, these are 4 different people. The guy you met did this circle of prayer. They were just doing the prayers for you, right? You could do the same prayers. The guy who would tell you what the scriptures are saying, like Swaminiji, or which is what I'm doing, also interpret scriptures. Because they're in Sanskrit, context got to be known. It takes decades of work to get it. So somebody will interpret scripture for you. Somebody else will be your agony aunt or uncle. So you don't need to. This is not you. You don't go to this guy and tell him that you have sinned because he doesn't care. He doesn't care that you've sinned because it's not his thing. It's not what he does. And he's not going to give you cultural advice either. That's a completely different dude. So the Hindu tradition generally has a very different social organization compared to the Western system, which is why when Hindus are placed here, it's kind of confusing because what do you do with all this? And because the tradition doesn't ask for too much by way of conformance, it's easy to drop out as a Hindu. You don't need to go to a temple. You don't need to read scripture. You don't need to even pray, technically. So that's the challenge that Hindus have to deal with. As we become a long-standing diaspora community, how do we transfer our tradition to our children in a way that's meaningful and complete?
Can I ask you a quick, well, I don't think it's a quick question. I mean, it's a quick question, not a quick answer. So when because you're a yogi,
Yes.
right? So then we really have this culture about yoga.
Yes.
Which is kind of, we have our own corporation here.
Sure. Yeah.
So when you're, what really is for the new tradition, yoga, when it's coming, like, what is it really the focus and the function for it?
Yeah. All right. The function of yoga is to get the Tweety bird to actually look at the other bird that's not talking, right? And to engage. So the yoga means to join. And all of Hindu tradition of yoga, very deep. Bhakti yoga is a yoga, jnana yoga, including the asana posture, meditation. All of that is jnana yoga. And then there's karma yoga of action, right? If you read the psychology of flow, that is karma yoga, right? Or stoicism, karma yoga. So, so your question is, what does yoga mean to the Hindus? Most average Hindus in India know nothing about this. I didn't know this when I was growing up either. Asanas were we thought what yoga is, but yoga is a deep thing at the core of our tradition. The union with divine is why we're here. Our project in this life is, so the human birth is considered very sacred in the Hindu tradition. Suicides are not welcome for the following reason. We go through an evolutionary process of births and rebirths. So you come in as like a bacterium, and then you work your way to higher forms until you reach the human form, which is when you can ask the following question: who am I? Why am I here? Prior to this birth, you're aware of you have consciousness, but you can't ask this question because you don't have the capability to ask the question. More importantly, you don't have the tools to answer those questions. You just live your lives. But in the human birth, you ask and answer this question, which is the answer is to unite with the divine. The purpose of this yoga is the purpose of this human life. It is to unite ourselves back to Godhead, back to divinity. And that's why the human birth is important, because here we have the tools to do something about it. And that's why yoga is core to the tradition. There's more, but I'm going to skip.
I know there's a lot more, and because there's so many different kinds of yoga.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at yoga and then Rajesh yoga.
There are techniques. So each of those are techniques. So you look at Raja Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Hatha Yoga. They're all schools of collections. The underlying alphabets are the same. Even Buddhism, they all use the same alphabets of the yoga tradition. They just reassemble them into different sonnets and songs. That's all. So Kundalini Yoga, for example, is the rising of body, like the Kundalini energy, which is a very specific kind of Hatha Yoga, which is a very specific kind of yoga itself. Not Kriya Yoga is somewhere in the same vicinity. So those are different schools where they've assembled them into different. You like Shakespeare, this is the Shakespeare school. You like rap, this is the rap school of prayer, whatever. That's what this is. Techniques assembled together.
Can I take you back to the avocado?
Sure. Who ripens the avocado?
So in the atheist version of Hinduism, what ripens the avocado?
So the word for that is Rita. Dharma itself could be a word. Rita, or order. Adesh, Rita, and Dharma are all words for order. And there is an order. We don't say there is a order maker. We just say there is order. Because who's going to deny that there is a method to this madness? There is some order. We just don't know if the order is outside of this creation. That's all. So that's what the Hindu atheists would say, that a creator God is not necessarily needed, which is Buddha's point of view as well, by the way. When asked, Buddha also held three different points of view, depending on who was asking. It would be the counter to whoever was asking. So the Buddha's atheistic point of view is the same. Your problem in life is that you're suffering because of attachment. I get rid of your suffering without having to invoke an extra dimensional deity. So do you need to know if there's an extra dimensional deity or not to solve your problem? No, you don't. Problem is solved. You can go away in a happy way, right? So that was his answer, which is it doesn't need to be brought into this conversation. His answer to that guy. And that's what the Hindu atheists would also say, which is it is not needed. There was also a the hedonistic school of the six major philosophy. One of them was the hedonistic school. Fantastic school. Don't try it at home. Charvaka or hedonists, which is they're one of the most famous ones are take debt, eat well, have a lot of sex, and die. Who the heck cares? Which is just enjoy. And I'm not sure if they meant that in jest when they said this, or this was used as a straw man argument by their opposition. But this is often the word cited about the Charvaka school of Hindu philosophy. Again, within the Hindu 6 philosophies, this is one of them.
And So in Sanskrit, would this order be called Ishvara?
No, they'd be called Nastik typically. Not Ishvara is God, and so they'd be Nastik. They would be not believing in Ishvara. Yeah. But Nastik also usually means that not believing in the authority of the Vedas, which is another more commonly used interpretation.
Can you tell me one more time what the special version of Advaita was?
Oh, Vishishta, Vishishta. Vishisht Advaita. So after Shankaracharya, there was lots of thinkers. So one of them was Madhvacharya and then Ramanujam, and that school created this special case where there is all one. So let me explain in sort of layman terms. Non-dualistic, all is one. You and I are not separate, except as an illusion we appear to be separate. We're all really one. That's Advaita, right? And Vishisht Advaita people think this is all right, but not enough. What they say is, all right, it's all one, but one of what? Right? And they say, okay, there must be a one of what, and that what is that one which we must be a part of. So we are offering ourselves to that divinity. In English, you might say the universe is big. And you say so I'm sorry if you're an atheist, but it gets me, it tickles me no end to hear people, they say, I'm an atheist, but I think the universe wants me to do this. I'm like, dude, you just picked a different word for God, right? It's the same thing, same concept, which is there is an order to the whole thing, and the order is asking me to do this. Well, right, it's the same thing. So when people say to Hindu gurus typically that they're an atheist, come debate with me, their usual jokey answer, which is also not jokey, is, you know what, if you tell me what God you don't believe in, I probably also don't believe in the God you don't believe in. So it's all good. But you tell me what you don't believe in, and maybe we don't have a disagreement. I also don't believe in that God. So okay, I'm going to just wrap up now, but the creator God of the clay worker God who's made us little parts of clay and then he's gone away, that's not the Hindu God. So that's one form of God. It's refuted in our tradition. Because if God made us and gone away as a blind watchmaker kind of deal, yeah, not so much. Because that's been refuted. It's dismissed as being a ridiculous sign for us in our tradition. Two is the milk converting into yogurt kind of school where God is converted into us. There is no more milk, it's all yogurt. Because you can't have milk and yogurt simultaneously, right? So God has transmuted himself or herself into us. That's the second school, also dismissed. And the third is this school, the kind of sweets that we just had, where God is in us, and as the world outside, and yet 3/4 of the God are unknowable to us. So Tripadasya Amritam Devi. So we say one part is knowable, known and knowable, to the extent of what we can see and measure and experience. 3/4 are not knowable. And that's the most sort of common version of what we understand as God. I hope I've answered some questions and I've confused you enough to go back. Hinduism is a very rich and varied tradition. I cannot condense thousands of years in I'm too small a person and we have too little a time. So I encourage you to explore it. We can come back to the temple. You can send me emails if you have questions. All of that is. I'll write my email over here for you. Any questions before we wrap up?
If the person was going to read a translation, interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, which one would you suggest? Sorry.
There are the Bible's been translated 3,000 times. Bhagavad Gita is probably translated a few lesser number of times, but it's been interpreted and translated a lot of times. That said, okay, I gotta go. So that said, so you could read Srila, the ISKCON version of Gita. That's a nice Gita, but he's got opinions on the other side that I don't agree with. You could also, Jesus. Sorry, no, it's ISKX, the Hare Krishna one. Okay. And the other one, so there's one I like is a really thick book. I could send you the reference. You really have to have the.
I'll email.
I'll write my email. You send me an email. I'm about to wrap up. Any more last questions? You have my email. naishkarmya@gmail.com. Or you can take a photo of this or something. All right, I'm going to just do the closing prayers. So if you could just sit comfortably. You close your eyes, sit with your back straight. Back, neck, and head in a straight line. Just relax your face. I'm going to chant the closing prayers, which is a prayer of well-being for everyone around. If you want to, bring your palms together at the heart center. Gently touch the back of the thumbs into the chest. I'm going to chant Om 3 times and then the closing prayers. Exhale completely, take a deep breath. Inhale. 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 Inhale and out chant. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Release your hands, rub your palms together to generate peace. And gently cup your eyeballs to transfer that heat. And then blinking, open your eyes and pull your palms back. I can open. Namaskar. Thank you for coming, and I've enjoyed giving this talk. I hope this has been useful to you. And send me an email if you have any questions. If you need the invite to the Sunday thing, send me an email. Namaskar.
Thank you.
This.